On behalf of Arizona State University's Institute for Humanities Research, Desert Humanities, and the Heard Museum of Art, we are happy to uh, screen this film on the water walk and have a conversation with those involved participants. And I'll introduce Angela Ellsworth, who will be one of the moderators today. Angela is an artist and professor at the School of Art at Arizona State University and co-founder of the Museum of Walking and is its current acting director. Ellsworth is a multidisciplinary artist traversing disciplines of drawing, sculpture, installation, video, and performance. Her solo and collaborative works have taken in a wide-ranging subjects such as physical fitness, endurance, illness, social ritual, and religious tradition. She's interested in art merging with everyday life and public and private experiences colliding in unexpected places. Her work's been reviewed at Art News, Fiber Art, Landscape Architecture Magazine, Canadian Art, Frieze Art, Art Forum, and Performance Research. So thank you, Angela, for moderating today, and welcome to you all.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. So first, I'd like to read a land acknowledgement, and then I'm going to introduce Steve, who will be moderating with me, and then the other participants in this panel. The land that surrounds us reflects Indigenous histories and is part of who Indigenous people are. The Museum of Walking acknowledges the 22 Native nations that have inhabited this land for hundreds of years. The Museum of Walking has occupied land in the Salt River Valley on ancestral territories of Indigenous peoples, including the Acamel O'odham, Pima, and Peepash Maricopa Indian communities, whose care and keeping of these lands allows us to be here today. The Museum of Walking, through our walking practices and programming, acknowledges the sovereignty of these nations and seeks to foster an environment of care and respect for Indigenous time and Indigenous knowledge systems. Indigenous peoples are not relics of the past and are here and continue to share knowledge amidst a backdrop of ongoing colonialism and oppression. Despite centuries of colonial theft and violence, this is still Indigenous land and will always be Indigenous land. So with that, I'd like to introduce Steve, who is the co-founding director, Stephen Yazzie, co-founding director of the Museum of Walking. He now lives in Denver with his family and continues to advise the Museum of Walking in various ways. He is an artist, and I'm going to read his very impressive bio here. He's a multidisciplinary artist working in video, painting, and installation. He's a member of the Navajo Nation and a veteran of the Gulf War, serving honorably with the U.S. Marine Corps. He received a BFA in Intermedia at Arizona State University and was named the 2014 Outstanding Graduates of the Herberger Institute of Design and the Arts, and studied at the Skowhegan School of Painting in Maine. Yazzie is the co-founder of Digital Preserve LLC, a video production company collaborating with artists, filmmakers, and interdisciplinary creatives to produce meaningful content and stories that highlight Indigenous issues. Yazzie's work has been exhibited nationally and internationally at such venues as the Museum of Modern Art, Smithsonian National Museum of the American Indian, National Gallery of Canada, Art Gallery of Ontario, the Heard Museum, the IAIA Museum of Contemporary Native Art, and the Wheelwright Museum in Santa Fe. He is the co-founder, like I said, of the Museum of Walking, and he'll be moderating with me afterwards. Nicole, if you could raise your hand, I'm going to introduce you next. Nicole Christian met Sharon Day in 2017 on the Missouri River Walk and currently works with Sharon Day at the Indigenous Peoples Task Force as a Narcan trainer and HIV tester, as well as a farm worker helping to grow the ingredients for the Indigibaby food, IPTF, Indigenous Peoples task force is cultivating. She is currently pursuing her doctorate of psychology at the University of St. Thomas, and she plans to continue walking for the water, to quote her mentor, Sharon, until her legs no longer work. Since her first walk with Sharon, she has participated in 7 Nibi walks, including the walk for the Rio Salado Salt River. And she joins us today from Minneapolis. Krista Davis, can you give us a wave? Krista Davis is a Yukon-based visual artist working in video, animation, performance, and sculptural installation. Her recent works engage with the complexities of human and non-human coexistence in our age of ecological crisis. She aims to make imaginative propositions to restructure prevailing cultural and social political relationships between humans, land, animals, and systems that govern us. It is her hope that it is her hope that this work plants seeds towards the larger ideological shift needed for a sustainable world. Davis's work has been presented in galleries and at festivals internationally, including the Arizona Biennial of Tucson Museum of Art and the Tromsø International Film Festival in Tromsø, Norway. She has contributed to a number of queer and ecological projects and co-founded the Outfest Queer Film Festival in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Davis received her BFA at the Nova Scotia College of Arts and designed, and received an MFA from Arizona State University from the intermediate program. We're very proud of both Steve and Krista for that. Davis participated in the Salt River Nibi Walk and is the director and editor of this film with Jenny Zander. So with that, I think we can head into the video.
I guess the simple answer is, what else is there to do? What else is there to do? I've spent my entire life, from the time I was 10 years old until I was 60 in protest. In the 60s, when I was a teenager, we thought we were going to save the world, and we have not. So when I went on that first walk, I realized, there is another way, and that's moving forward in the spirit of love and bringing as many people along with me as possible. Women are the only ones who carry the water because we are the protectors. We wear long skirts when we carry the water because it's my understanding that this was our attire and traditionally, and also because it connects us to the earth. Skirts creates that vortex for the energy to come up from Mother Earth to that place where we bring life into the world. The staff is a protection for the water and for the walker. And there are so many stories about the Migizi, the eagle. The eagle is the one that saved humans, and we revere them because they have such great vision. They can just see such a great distance. So we love and revere, respect the eagles, and they provide protection. As we hand the water or the staff from one person to the other, we say, "In God, Sichige Nibi Onche." I will do it for the water. Just a word of encouragement, right? From one person to the next, from the person who's handing the water off to the person who's taking it. In God, Sichige Nibi Onche. When we stop at the end of the day, we make a circle on the ground with whatever is available. Sometimes it's rocks, or it could be flowers, or whatever is available on the earth. And we end the day the same way we began, with people offering their prayers. We sing, and then we stop. And then we go back to that very spot the next day and begin anew. Beishigo Asema first. So when we were growing up, that's what they tell you. Always have your tobacco with you. Tobacco is medicine for indigenous people, and it's indigenous to the Americas and to the islands. And so we use as an offering before we gather the water, but then also as we're walking throughout the day. If we come across flowing water, we offer our sema, because we're not only offering the water that we're carrying, but all of the water that we see. Beishigo Sema, tobacco first. Before you begin a journey, before you plant, before you gather something, you offer a sema. We use a copper pail because copper will clean the water. On my pails, I have either copper beads or cones from the jingle dress. Those cones from the jingle dress are a healing dance that young women do when someone's sick. And so just to hear that copper cones against the pail, just sort of that reminder as you walk that, what we're doing is to heal the water. I think, it's that stillness that we have on the walks, that quiet time really allows for those thoughts to come. What do we want this world to be like? In Transcendental Meditation, they say the mind always moves to an area of greater charm. And I think if you're not filling it up with MSNBC or something else, you're allowing that space for your mind to move to an area of greater charm. And we really can dream a new world.
It came off the stove boiling. So then we just wrapped it up, put it in a box, closed it up, and away we went.
You never forget, those people who walked with you, or, those experiences, and different people stand out for different reasons, and had, roles sort of develop as you walk. So it is this relative making kind of experience. So that happens. We carried the red dress on the first day to honor all the missing and murdered Indigenous women and children all across North and Central and South America. The red dress was created as a symbol of those missing and murdered Indian women. Those kids were part of the Iquiduan Youth Theater, and, they're willing to drive across country to walk for 2 days and, drive back. And so they've been part of every walk in some way or another. They are the future. They're the future leadership. And when they come, they just brighten everything up. our prophecies, they said that in the time of the seventh fire, which everybody estimates that we're in right now, that there would come a time where people have to make a decision as to how to be on Nimama Ki, on our Mother Earth. And in those prophecies, they didn't say indigenous people have to make a decision. They said people living on Nimama Ki have to make a decision to continue on a path of destruction or go to this other path that would lead to harmony with all things. So when I do the walks, I invite everybody, because if it's just up to indigenous people, we're doomed, right? Because our people have been decimated to such small population. We can't do anything by ourselves. We can have the most brilliant vision for the future. What kinds of communities we could create, what kinds of care for the earth and the water that we could create. But unless that's a shared vision, it's not going to happen. Years ago, when we gathered the water at the Gulf, Josephine Mandam and the grandmother who started these contemporary movements, we had been walking about 4 days, and she said to me, "Sharon, I had this realization that we orphaned this water, and now it's our responsibility to take care of it until we get it to where it's going." And when we poured into, at that point it was Lake Superior, she said, "How long will it take this water to get home? But on its journey, it will confer with all the other waters, and it will tell them that there are human beings that still love and care for the water." I'm not sure what happens for other people, but for me, it's approaching that place where we're going to release the water is always a mixture of happiness and sadness, because you've been carrying this water for days, and it's almost being like a foster parent, where you have this child that you've been entrusted to take care of, and then they're going to go back home, and yet it's a lonely feeling because you're going to miss them. And so it's with this mixture of gladness and sadness that we pour the water back into the river. I can still picture it in my mind, that place where we were at, and the sun was shining and birds were singing, and we offered that water back.
It's not really my turn to speak, but I feel like I'd just like to say a few things before Nicole and Krista talk about what they brought to share with us. It's amazing to watch this document of that time over a year ago. It was the last community walk that the Museum of Walking did before COVID shifted all of our realities. And so seeing people so close together, and we were all touching and sharing. The water got passed so quickly, there was no time. We never could have like wiped it down. I mean, I guess we could have, but seeing how we became a unit, and by following Sharon is just such a beautiful reminder. And so I just want to thank Krista for all the work that you did on the video. And I know Jenny worked with you as well. And just a little history, Stephen and I, when we started the museum in 2014, we started thinking about who would we bring in, what kind of events would we do, would we have exhibitions, would we be a collecting museum? And one walk that one of us discovered was Nibi Walks. And so we said, this was like years ago, and I just kept emailing and trying to get in touch with Sharon for like years, because we thought this would be the perfect, in terms of our mission with Mal, this would be the most like important walk to be doing. And I never got a response. And she's so funny, because later when we finally spoke, I mean, she's incredibly busy, and most of the times when I emailed her, she's like, I was walking. I was walking the Missouri River, I was walking the Mississippi, like I'm not going to answer my phone. So anyway, that then I understood, actually. I said, how do you have time to be the executive director of the Indigenous Peoples Task Force and do all of these walks? And she said what she says in the beginning of the film, which is, what else would I be doing with my time off? What else would I be doing with, a vacation, but walking for the water? So, all right, Nicole, would you like to speak to us, share some things?
I sure can. Yes. So I was thinking of what to tell with you guys, and I guess just to give you a history of the walks and my experience with them. So Sharon mentioned in the film about Josephine Mendamen, who started these walks and was Sharon's mentor for the water walks. Josephine started walking for the Great Lakes, and she walked around all of them twice. And so an incredible woman. And she inspired Sharon to start walking for all the rivers in the US that needed some prayers and love. And I actually heard about both of them from a teacher of mine who was a water walker herself. And she was who encouraged me to go on the Missouri River walk. So this was right after Standing Rock and Faith Spotted Eagle had offered tobacco to Sharon to ask her to walk for this river because of all the harm that was being done to her and around it. And so Sharon said, I'll do it, and started this incredible journey. And I joined up with them just as they were crossing the border into North Dakota. And I was by myself, and I was really nervous. I didn't know any of them. And immediately they gave me food. And even though I brought a tent, they offered me a bed in their trailer, and were just, incredibly welcoming and wonderful. And it changed my life. And I've been on every walk with her since. And it's brought me everything. It's helped me find the connection back to my own ancestor who was Ojibwe. Her name was Charlotte, and she was kind of covered up in my family. It's brought me the water walker family that I have now, and it's changed my relationship with water completely. It's just become so much more love. And I see that for everyone who's joined on the walks. I could tell you so many stories. There was a woman when we were walking whose husband had died the night before, and she stopped and she was like, he told me about you, and I was wondering if I could walk with you. And she carried the water for half a mile and just started crying. And then we all started crying because she felt that connection to him. Or this other woman who had just had surgery and could barely hold 5 pounds, but was so moved to carry the water that, we had another woman help her hold it, and so that she could walk. And it's just, it changes people, and it brings you together, and then you're just never the same. And one of the things that Sharon tells me is so important is to really put in the effort and the work for the water. So when we carry it fast to try and be fast like the river. And that's why the Salt River was so special to me, because we were walking up mountains and I had to work harder than any other walk before. And it's just, it was a privilege. And, you know, it's, you get to know that river and to really, you know, love it on a personal level, instead of just having it be this abstract body of water. And you know, I think that's just what I want my life to be like, to love as much as I can, and then to do everything I can to protect the things I love. And that's the number one thing that I've learned from Sharon, to you know, as she puts it, to move forward in the spirit of love, and to protect the things you love. Um, and yeah, I'll pass it on to whoever wants to talk next.
I think that's me. I'll talk a little bit about the production of the film. It was definitely a unique production to undertake, because I was both part of it. I carried the water and the staff in the red dress, and I was also documenting it at the same time. And so from, 8:30 in the morning when we started to when we stopped at night, we were in motion. That's the idea, right? We had the pail of water, and we had to keep it moving forward no matter what, until we got it to its destination. So the whole production was like a moving river. How I got involved, I was in the Yukon, and Ron and Angela contacted me about coming back down to Phoenix to document the walk. I worked with both of them in my degree at ASU, and I think I might have been one of their only students who didn't have a car. I walked everywhere across the sprawling cement of Phoenix, and in a city of 4.5 million, I rarely pass people on the sidewalk. Everyone's in their cars. So it was a weird disconnect from the people and from the land and from the water, the complete opposite from how I was living in the Yukon, in such close relation to the earth and to community. So having that disconnect in Phoenix is really hard, and I carried a real sadness for that. So when Ron and Angela contacted me about the water walk, a project that was about connecting to the river, connecting to community, to the desert through walking, I was like holding my phone with one hand and booking a ticket with, with the other. So I came down to the desert with my gear and a skirt, and not really knowing what to expect during the walk or how to prepare to document a moving project like this. And how to capture the spirit of the walk, or the distance we traveled, or the shift in the landscape. And I think that part worked itself out organically, kind of how we as a group of strangers found rhythm with each other over the course of 5 days. I think that happened with the filming too. The first day, I think our energy was trying to figure it out. I was running ahead with the camera, like breathing really deeply, and like trying to get shots with my hands steady and not to catch my breath with it, and trying to focus in the bright lights, and it was really tricky. But by the end, that just becomes part of the motion, going between the camera and the water and the staff and supporting everyone. So that was really, really cool to kind of go through that process. But yeah, I think the biggest challenge was that we were always moving. I wish I had chance to capture more dialogue and people talking about their experiences, because it was such a powerful experience to be part of, and everybody, you could feel people kind of changing from the inside. And but it moved so fast, and by the end of the day, we were so exhausted that it felt a bit too much to ask. But yeah, the other challenge leads to why we chose to incorporate animation, and that was about doing justice to the pieces of Ojibwe culture that Sharon was sharing along the way. I spent a lot of time with Sharon in the car, and she told stories that went a bit deeper into some of the practices that were involved in the walk. So for instance, why women wear skirts. And those images were really powerful in my head, and I wanted to bring them to life. So working with animation seemed a good way to make that happen. Also, we weren't allowed to film the ceremonies. So that was a way to be able to tell that part of the story without having actual footage. So I guess I'll finish up by going back to why I wanted to take on the project in the first place, in the name of that sadness that I had for Phoenix and the Salt River. But after 5 days of the walk, I felt that community. I felt connected not only to the desert and to the countryside, but like to the earth under the cement of the valley. And I felt that connection from the Salt River to the Gila and all the waterways, and to the pipeline protests that were happening on the Indigenous land in Canada, and the missing and murdered Indigenous women like across our continent. And there's so much power in that. And so for me, putting together this video was to honor the potential that these walks have to connect us all. And I will pass that on to the next person now.
Steve, would you like to respond or reflect on the film? Or...
Yeah, I was going to jump in there. Yeah, first off, thank you, Angela, and thank you all so much for pulling this together. Nicole, thank you for just sharing your connection to Sharon and your experience and how you got started. That was going to be one of my questions, so you answered that, and I really think this is a wonderful piece. Krista, the film is just a great documentation, and I'm really glad that you talked about the animation, because it is. There was an idea or a question I wanted to kind of bring up to the group, and also something that we could bring up to the public. But in terms of Indigenous communities and public and private ceremony, I mean, those are very specific and important for many reasons, many obvious reasons. The public one, obviously, because it extends into our communities beyond our own, whether they're our native or Indigenous communities, but into the non-native communities. And I think being able to share those and being able to bring people in to be a part of certain aspects of ceremony can be very healing and very important ways of connecting. So your choices with the animations, I thought were great, and I was really moved by how that helped to really build a dynamic story and documentation. And it had to be challenging too, trying to get in front of walkers and be a part of it at the same time. And I can appreciate your all the work that you put into it. One thing I wanted to I've been thinking about a lot in terms of how we think about land and how we think about our responsibility to our community and land and place. And I want to bring this up as a general thought for anyone to respond to, but this notion that we can somehow save the earth or save the planet, or that we have a role in that. I think we have to be very mindful and careful of how we think of ourselves in terms of like the history of the earth, or the planet, or the ecosystems. And I think for many Indigenous people, and for my family, and things that we think about when we're thinking about the earth and our relationship to it, it's less about trying to save something. It's more about trying to respect what already exists and heal and honor and have a reciprocal relationship. So whenever we take on things that are approaching this area, that's kind of a gray space too, where it's very branded sometimes, like we're going to go out and save the planet. And I thought that was a really great way that you set up the film, Krista, was to, because I know when you're editing things, when we think about these things, it's like you want to make sure you pull people in, and that Sharon had this, and Nicole, you might be able to speak to this because you spent a lot of time with her, but she had this, very earnest, and I think we all do, but early on, like, we're going to save the planet, but then how it reshapes itself into this idea of love. And I thought that how we've all come to that in many ways. And Nicole, you touched on that, which I thought was really great, because one of my questions was going to be, what did you all learn from this? At all these years and all these walks that you've taken, what have you walked away from? And that you stepped right into that space of, of love and respect, and, kind of having a stronger reflection for that. So yeah, I wanted to mention that. But as questions come in, maybe we can hope to answer those. But thank you all so much. And yeah, looking forward to continuing this conversation.
I have a question before we open it up to everyone. I'm curious, I could go on and on about my communication with Sharon, and, the huge learning experiences, just being with her, just sitting and having a coffee, or I think she drinks tea, but, anyway, that's another session. But that she truly, as an elder, she shares her knowledge in a way that she's very clear about certain things, like very specific, very clear, and also very loving about the way she communicates it, and kind of puts you in as she kind of puts me in my place as a white woman, and, in a very with a kind, gentle arm, and says, white people are used to taking control. She's like, it's no fault of theirs. That's just what they've been taught. And I was like, wow, okay. Well, so as the director of the Museum of Walking, kind of producing this event, it had me ask this question over and over and over again. When am I stepping in and it's not my place, or I'm trying to organize it too much? And that was a huge learning experience. Something else that I want to ask Nicole is about the lineage of water walkers. And Sharon, I think she's 68 years old.
She just turned 70 this year, actually.
So, she's still walking. And I know that it's important to her that this lineage is passed on, because it was passed on to her. And so could you talk about the connection, Sharon's, commitment sounds a little serious, but her focus or practice of bringing in Native youth to be sure that, it's not a bunch of, that it's not a bunch of non-Indigenous people carrying on this tradition. Of course, we can participate, but that the Native youth that are brought, and that's why they were there. And I found it really, it was really moving to have these young folks leading ceremony. And, can you just talk about that lineage?
Yeah, of course. So the kids are essential. Sharon, as much as she is going to walk as long as she can, and she knows that this work is so important that it has to continue past her. And that's why, those kids that we brought, I drove them down. They're from our youth program, and they're, their craft is telling stories. They're in theater, and Sharon is, wants them to be a part of this, and to know the stories of the water walks and the traditions and ceremonies that guide it, so that basically they can pick up the torch when she's ready to pass it off. But yeah, the kids, this isn't the only walk they've been on. They've been on so many. and they are, they're young and full of energy and life, and they just they they're amazing when they're on the walks. Everybody loves to have them around. But yeah, I know that she plans um, to walk the Mississippi again, and to take them with, and to make sure that by the end of it, that they know exactly what to do to carry it on, so that she has passed that knowledge on, and can be okay with passing in, with letting them take it up. But yeah, no, the kids, they're so important.
And thank you for that. Angela, I have an audience question, if I may read that to the group. Thank you for the inspiring film. Krista, I believe this is directed to you. How does it affect you and the walk, the parts of the river are inaccessible due to human intervention, like dams, channeling water? And this could be probably for everyone that's participated. And you spoke to this a little bit, but yeah, could you maybe, I guess as a filmmaker and as an artist who's documenting work like this, has this experience shifted the kinds of work that you are doing now, or what kinds of things has happened? Obviously, COVID has been a big part of our lives collectively, but getting connected to the community more and the land, that you talked about, has that inspired new ways of approaching your work?
I feel like my work actually is quite mirrors this type of work that Sharon's doing, but I do it on my own, kind of with my camera. And it was so nice to be able to do it in a group of people. And to, we really saw a community develop from the start. We were strangers when we started. And I feel connected to those people now. And I think that we could kind of pick up where we left off, and it was just 5 days of moving together. I think that the part of the question about the inaccessibility, that almost, I think, brought us closer together. I think maybe Nicole could speak to this better, but I remember hearing one of the Minnesota walkers say, it's so weird to walk with a river that you can't see because it's dried up. And that's a very different situation in the desert than it is in other places. So I think, for me, it felt like we were walking, even when we couldn't see the river, we were walking for the river, and it's another reminder that we're connected. So I found those parts powerful. I don't know how you felt, Nicole.
Yeah, I love that question. We actually had a walk for Phelan Creek where it was entirely underground because it had been put into storm drains. So I definitely understand walking for a river you can't see. And I think it's how Sharon says it and how Josephine said it, that when we take the pail, we've orphaned the water. And so the river is with us. Even when we can't see it, we're carrying it in our hands. And so it feels very present, and you just, it's she says it like water can hear you and listen. And so the prayers that we say and think as we're carrying the water, like the water hears that, and then when we pour it back to the river, it tells its family about it. So in a way, it doesn't really matter that we can't see it all the time, because it's with us.
Nice, thank you. We have another question from the audience. We are inspired by the clear power of women in this water walk practice. Can you speak more about what the walk taught you about connections between water and womanhood?
I'll take that one first. I think Chris again. Yeah, it's I've completely changed my the people around me and the culture, and changed that. But before that, I grew up in a white family, and it's very patriarchal. And so to come to like a women-led ceremony where, you know, these women are just shown automatic respect, and it changes you. And then just to hear all their stories and to be inspired and to grow real relationships with them, is an incredible gift. You know, I think Krista touched on that too. You know, it's not just about connecting to the water, it's about making that community and a family. So that's what it feels like. It feels like making a family.
All right, you want me to grab this one?
Yeah, grab it, Steve.
Okay, I'll grab the next question from the audience. Let's see. Oh, optional question. So this is, you don't have to answer this if you don't want to. Cars, concrete pollution. There is a lot of violence in our environment. The Nibi Water Walk is a particular kind of negotiation with violence, and it is a way of healing. Can you talk about the relationship between violence and love we see in the documentary and in the walks? I think that's a really good question. I wanted to follow, maybe I can add that I do appreciate that there was the, you know, that symbolic gesture of the red hand too, that was also incorporated into that, you know, for, you know, murdered and missing Indigenous women. And so it kind of tagging along this question, is there any, as this walk is a public ceremony or a public experience, have you integrated, or has the walk integrated different ways of highlighting these relationships between violence and love, or the, you know, acknowledging, you know, the impact on the environment?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, I think Sharon is very purposeful in whatever river she walks in, acknowledging all of the you know, violence that has gone around it. So every Valentine's Day, there's a walk for MMIW, for missing and murdered Indigenous women. And that was why we had the dress with us that day, because it was Valentine's Day. And we were trying to, you know, be connected to, you know, our family back in Minnesota who was also marching. And, you know, the staff we carried was from a previous walk for the Red River, that, you know, the Red River of the North, which, you know, that walk was so connected to violence. You know, the walk was for the river, but Sharon was like, I can't ignore the women that whose spirits are in that river now, because of so many who have been murdered and their bodies have been thrown into the water, and you know, sometimes never found. So I think it's about acknowledging how they're the same. You know, the violence against people is often mirrored in the violence against the earth, and in just holding space for both of them, and walking for both and praying for both, and to at least name it and not ignore it.
Can I ask another question? That I meant to ask this earlier, but in terms of like the other Indigenous communities and those waterways that are flowing through, you know, tribal lands, have you, or what kinds of relationships or connections to those other communities has this walk created, or have you had?
Yeah, so Sharon always tries to call the tribes ahead of time, and most of the time with any walk, she's being asked, and a lot of time it's by the people from those tribes that are along those waterways that have asked her to come there, because I think she, you know, doesn't want to overstep and go where she has not been invited, and so there's actually been walks that she's canceled before because the people from the tribes surrounding that area weren't able to make it, and she didn't want to walk it without them. So I think, that's definitely part of, so much a part of the Water Walks is partnering with other tribes and honoring that this is their land that she's walking for, that we're walking for. And, and it's also wonderful. Like when we were on the Missouri, all the reservations would house us at night and would give us feasts. And it's just, it was like a party every night. So yeah, I loved making those connections, and we've definitely stayed in contact. That's one of the other wonderful things about the Water Walks, is how many people are connected and how you just become a part of that community and you never leave. So
I also would like to add just some details about, well, I had this idea of, we're walking the whole river, it's 160 miles. And I hadn't really thought that we wouldn't be able to walk the whole river, because above, or I guess it would be east of Roosevelt Lake, which is really where it starts, it's thick. Well, it's indigenous land for sure. And then there's really no trail and no path. And so Sharon and I had sort of scoped out, like, if that was possible. I said, well, maybe we could put you on a boat and then you could come down with the water, and then we could so we went through all these different plans to like really take from the absolute highest part. But Sharon, she said, let's not fuss around with that. This is a spot that feels right to start the walk, and we'll do it here. And it was before Roosevelt Lake, one of the dams. And I also imagined, that we'd all be walking at once. We'd be a group, and like this group of people walking on the road together. And Sharon said, no, we don't do that. It's not safe, and it's not a protest. And we're, for all these reasons. And we will do this in a relay. So everyone walking 1 mile, and only the women, or there always has to be a woman holding the water. But it moved so quickly. That was the surprising thing about this week together, was that, once we started with the water, it was just boom, 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 moving. And Nicole's a really fast walker. Sharon would say, Nicole's really awesome. She's going to make time for us today. And Sharon had no concern that we were walking 160 miles as well. She's like, this is easy. This is nothing. I thought, wow, really? And it was the communal aspect of different people bringing meals to us every evening, whether it was at the place where we stopped, or maybe it was at someone's house, depending on where we were. But that felt really important, that in the evening we could commune around food and talk about the day. I just wanted to add that the quick pace of these walks. There's no dilly-dallying. And I said, well, is anyone, because we were walking on the freeway as well. And I said, well, there's some paths near the river. She's like, we need to have the cars for safety. And so we're going to be on the Beeline Highway. And I thought, Beeline Highway, talk about violence and concrete. And I said, does anyone ever get hurt? And she's like, no, just the people driving the cars. Like they car gets because someone's not paying attention, and a car, I guess, I don't know if Nicole, you saw that happen, but she said, of course it's not the people that are goofing up, it's the car. So does anyone else in the audience have questions?
Yeah, there's a question about the maybe that Krista could respond to in regards to filming and the process. I think to trim it down, or to get to the point of the question, how did you go about building the narrative, I guess? And this was primarily Sharon that was speaking, that you recorded, right? And how did you make that choice? And was it just a practical approach and just trying to film it in real time, and knowing probably that you didn't have many other options? But maybe you can share a little bit of your process with that.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, that the way this happened, like, truly was organic and of the water walk. And I think that was because I was a participant as well as documenting it. And it was just, it was moving so fast. So the story was unfolding, we were documenting it, and then COVID happened. And so things that maybe we could have gone back and spoken to people and got their reactions and their reflections on the walk was just, we were unable to do it. Jenny and I had our first kind of taste of COVID production. We had to do a Zoom interview with Sharon where we were talking her through how to use the external mic to record her call while we asked questions over Zoom. So that happened, you know, part out of necessity and part out of just the structure of the walk. Yeah.
Thank you. We have time for just one more question. Let's see. Can one of you please talk about the relationship between speed and prayer? We are so conditioned to think of prayer as slow, but you are all walking so fast. It's an interesting question.
It is interesting. And and it's funny you guys talk about how I'm the fast walker, but Krista could keep up with me, and between carrying the water, she was running ahead to take pictures of everybody. So yeah, but okay, I'll answer this. So I think that you know, the reason we go fast is in honor of the river that we're carrying. You know, sometimes Sharon will look up how fast the river we're walking for goes, and she's like, well, we can't do that, but we can try and come close. So I think it's just, you know, honoring the spirit of that water and how the river goes fast and it never stops. And that's why we try and walk as fast as we can. And we never stop and we never go backwards. There's been times where we've had to slow down by necessity if we're crossing an intersection and the light's red, and then we just go in zigzags so that we keep moving and never stop and we don't go backwards. So it's because of that. And it is, you know, as much as our bodies are going fast, our minds are going slow, because it's very meditative. You know, when you're carrying the water, you don't speak, and you're just supposed to be focusing on what you're carrying and the things around you. And you know, you have the staff carrier with you to look out for dangers, so you don't have to think about anything except praying for the water. So I think just in that way, it is like a slow prayer. You know, it's like 160-mile long prayer. So it's I guess that's the best way I can answer that.
That's a great answer. And it's not speed for just being speed, but that we are the water. We are moving as the water. And, you know, when you're just learning the system, you can, you know, you're trying to grab and you're trying to say some words that you've just learned. And then, you know, Sharon kind of like, go, like no stopping, no thinking. You have to go, you have the water, like the water's not going to stop. It doesn't stop. And so once you understand that, the speed is just what it is. It doesn't really, it doesn't make that big of a difference, because it is really a prayer. Thank you, all of you, for coming and being here from Canada and Minnesota and Denver. And I'm actually in Santa Fe right now, and all the people in Arizona. This is the beauty of Zoom, right? That we can all kind of come together in this way. So unless there are any, do you guys have any last comments you'd like to make to the audience? Last words? Okay. For all of you that came, we can't see your faces, but we're very happy you were here. And we hope you enjoyed the conversation in the video. This has been recorded, so there will be the Institute for Humanities Research will have a YouTube page, and I don't know if you can they see the YouTube link? Anyway, we'll get it to you somehow. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Desert Humanities. Institute for Humanities Research, because the fellowship that Sharon and I were asked to engage with allowed, it really, it funded this walk. It brought Native youth to the walk and helped us immensely. And it was, yeah, just wonderful that it was able to happen. So thank you, everyone.